The underdog is back, Robert Ris. I'm happy to have you here again. And I'm very curious who is going to be the underdog today.
Well, it's from the European Club Cup. A very interesting game, as I was playing there myself. And it's like in all these team events, like either the Olympiad or the European Club Cup, special event, especially when we're looking at the first round. As the game I've selected, it's from round one between Francois Godart, a Belgium player, 30 years old, IM 2377, and he's playing against absolute superstar Praggnanandhaa. And it's not like every day you get a chance to play against such a strong, young, ambitious superstar.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe world champion one day, who knows? And it's very special. And in general, it's always the question how you should approach such games. I think 9 out of 10 games it's going to be really tough, obviously, but also these strong guys, they can have a bad day. And the question is how to play. Should you play super aggressively, solidly, theoretical lines, or not? Because in general, these players, they will outclass you basically in every part of the game. So you need a bit of luck. And well, let's see what happens in this game. Are you
Looking
ready?
forward, yes. Let's go.
So the game starts with one e4. It's the Sicilian defense, and white goes for the Rossolimo variation. Black goes for e6, castle kingside, knight g7.
Were you talking about the Rossolimo in one of your Fritz trainers, or did I just... Sorry.
Actually, not in my last
No, okay.
video, I think, because I have a video on the Sicilian Taimanov.
The time
starting with the move e6.
Gotcha.
Then you don't get the Rossolimo. You do get some other anti-Sicilians.
Of course. Sorry for that.
Yeah, Rossolimo is another big topic. So let's see what happens here. Rook e1. And here a lot of different ways of playing for black. The most common move is to play a6 and questioning what the bishop is going to do next, either to take the knight or dropping back. I mean, there are a lot of different ways. It's actually quite difficult to remember all the theory here, because basically every move, both sides have a lot of options. Pragg played here the move b6. It's also one of the top choices of the engine. But strange thing is that after the move c3, when white is trying to occupy the center with d4, now black played the move a6. So you may think, why not immediately? Well, obviously, black is looking for ideas to complete queenside development, but definitely it's much slower than what you would normally see in these lines. White decided to take to accelerate the development, try to exploit the lead in development, giving up the bishop pair. But now white is ready to strike in the center with the move d4. And black played d5.
Wow.
So preventing white ever from playing that move. But already here, we are now at move 8, but things are getting really sharp pretty fast. As white takes here on d5. So here you see the e-file is occupied by the rook. You cannot recapture with a pawn. Queen takes, only move. Exactly. And now things are getting really interesting. Like white played here the move c4. It's a pawn sacrifice. You're attacking the queen. Queen takes c4, and now white continues with the move d5. And here, the knight is under an attack. Once again, the e-pawn cannot move. Therefore, you cannot take on d5. That would lose the queen. So here, the knight goes to b4. And white is looking for ways to break through in the center, which is not so easy because the bishop is still covering the pawn on e6. So white continues developing with knight c3.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see so many different moves. It must have taken a while to think about this.
Well, the interesting thing is that here now, after queen d3, black is offering the exchange of queens. There's not so much theory here at this point. Just one game played by Pragg's sister, Vaishali. Yeah, so they must have studied or shared some lines together. In that game, white played the move bishop d2, and Vaishali got actually a good game with the black pieces.
Wow.
Bishop f4 is another interesting move to activate the bishop, and white says, okay, we can exchange queens, not a big deal. You're going to recapture with a rook, and despite being a pawn down, white does have tremendous piece activity in the center. It's still very complicated, of course. Black goes for bishop e7. Black could have taken queens immediately, but it's actually what happens now after white played knight e5. Here, black is practically forced to exchange queens. And of course, that's what black wants to do. So here we are. Like, you're a pawn down. It doesn't seem like there's an immediate threat, but because of that pawn on d5, it's pretty difficult for black to complete development. Like, for instance, one line I had been analyzing, which was not played. In the game, black decided to castle. But one of the lines you need to investigate here is what happens if you just grab that pawn on d5. Now, the thing is that if white is just going to take with a knight, and you try to regain the material, the bishop will come to e6, ensuring that the e file will never be opened. This looks like a very healthy extra pawn for black. And who knows, after the rook moves away, maybe at some point the pawn on a2 might be hanging as well. So I do think that after knight takes d5, and the reason why Pragg didn't go for it is he was probably afraid of this move, rook takes d5. It's a stunning exchange sacrifice.
Whoa.
But the thing is, though, that after pawn takes and now knight takes, there are a lot of problems here.
Mm-hmm.
These knights, you got to watch out. They can go in every direction, right? Like knight c7 is a huge threat. Maybe the other knight can come to c6. You cannot castle because then the bishop on e7 will be hanging. But the critical line, and this is what black should have considered, is to go back with the bishop to d8. And I think that's a very difficult move to see from afar, because it's against any sort of humanity to move the bishop away from that e file. It really just sets a discovered check on the king.
Yeah.
For instance, the critical line is knight g6. You block with the other bishop. You allow white to take the rook in the corner, so you're actually a full piece down. But after king d7, the knight on d5 is hanging. Here you see that the bishop on d8 is actually defending the pawn on b6, so white cannot take with the knight. And after moving the knight away, you put a bishop on e7, and you see that at the end of the day, the knight on h8 is trapped. Absolutely insane line, very difficult to find.
That is crazy.
So I think this was sort of a missed chance, definitely, to get a better endgame for black. Instead, that's what happens when players are out of form. They play sort of solid moves, but it doesn't really solve the problem. I mean, black remains here under pressure. Yeah. Like, the knight comes into c6, and well, there's a big question what to do. Are you going to take the knight, which is what happened in the game? But if you do that, then white does get a very annoying pawn on c6, and it's not easy to wrap up that pawn because the bishop can't move. And you would like to move the bishop so that you can attack the pawn with one of your rooks. Instead of taking, and we will see the game later, black may have just moved the bishop away, so not giving white that powerful passed pawn on c6. And well, I think black is doing absolutely okay. For instance, after bishop d6, attacking the rook goes away. You can regain the pawn by taking twice on b4. But look at this. I mean, here you're able to finally, as black, to connect the rooks, and whether you're going to win that, it's a different question. But that's also in the back of your mind when, as a stronger player playing against a low-rated one, you would like to play for a win, and you're not looking for ways to equalize. Like, I mean, black is better, but does black have realistic winning chances here? That's something what Pragg must have wondered during this calculation process.
I need to wonder about something else, so I need to quickly ask you that question, which is on my mind. So, of course, Elisabeth Peetz, Carsten Müller, there's a couple of people who are more and more talking about the psychology of chess and how important it is and how much it can make a difference after all. And I'm thinking, because Pragg is known to be a very solid positional player, but also very fearless, right?
He's a really good calculator in general. That's what I think. Yeah,
that's one thing. So I wonder how, if you know the personality of a player, if you can play towards their weaknesses. So thinking about this, is it too deep? I don't know. It's like I'm thinking like, okay, you give a pawn and Pragg will just take it because he knows he can calculate, especially against the weaker players. So even if it gets a little sharper, he will get out of there. Or is this a different approach?
But, well, it really depends. I mean, you also have to be objective in a way. Like you cannot take too much risk because
Yeah.
look, the position we get to see, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult for Black to play for a win. First of all, he needs to untangle his pieces. Then you
Hmm.
can start thinking about how to play for a win. So there must always be some objective part inside
I
you
see, of
to
course.
play. Looking from Godart's perspective, like the weaker player on paper, I think it's also quite difficult for him to play against the weakness of the stronger opponent because basically I think Pragg is better at all parts of
Yeah, yeah,
the game
yeah.
usually. So it's a very tough question. I mean, I think to play against someone's weakness, you need to have some sort of equal playing strength between both players. Like, for instance, if you look at the Kasparov Kramnik match, the World Championship match in 2000, okay, it's like almost similar strength, but Kramnik had a very clear game strategy or match strategy
Mm.
to try to get queens off the board. Yeah, so he introduced the Berlin defense. So he comes up with the general concept that it makes sense to try to play at Kasparov's his weakness. But I think when there's like a 300 400 points elo difference, I'm not sure how much sense it makes or how realistic it is to carry out such approach.
Yeah.
When I would be the weaker player, I would just try to play within my own strength. So if I'm a very aggressive player, I'm not going to change my strategy. I will just stick to my own guns and see if that's going to work out. That's probably the best chance to do.
Think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Yes, yes. Concentrate on your own strengths and the things you're good at and try to get them to their fullest potential.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, let's see what happens. So
Yeah.
after taking on c6, pawn went to b5. Um, White played here to move a4 to challenge the queen side. Maybe in a way, White was still a bit afraid of this queen side majority. Not that it's like a big deal here yet, but I think Godart is playing it in a sort of safe way, so that he's challenging these pawns. Pawn went to b4, and now the knight goes to e4. So he's trying to gain control over the d6 square. And well, after the move c4, he played here bishop d6, which is a clear sign that he wants to trade off that annoying bishop. It's an important defender of the dark squares. Black played rook a7 to defend the bishop. And now rook d4. So here you can see that thanks to that installation of the bishop on d6, the pawns on the queen side, they are somewhat separated from Black's remaining pieces. And after bishop takes, knight takes, okay, it's clear that White can play it safe and try to eliminate these pawns.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also a sign that Godart is playing very practical here. Like he wants to not to take too much risk. I mean, there were a lot of different ways of playing before. Like for instance, the move a4. It was definitely not the only move. He could have considered other options
Sure.
as well. But anyway, in this position after the exchange of dark squared bishops, Black played here c3. You take on b4, and well, if you actually take on b2, there's a funny moment here which I want to show you. This was not played in the game, but there's knight b7, and the rook on a7 remains out of play. And the
Oh,
trick is you can ignore that pawn on b2. It's not an issue at all. If you do take and try to eliminate the pawn on b7, then the rook will come to d1.
that's cute.
And the pawn on b7 is poisoned, of course, because it's leading to back rank mate. And otherwise, okay, the rook will come in to d7, then to c7, and then to c8. And you make sure that the pawn will
Instant
be
loss.
promoted. And the rook, this is also general endgame lesson. The rook is fantastically placed behind the passed pawn to support its own pawn, but also to defend against the enemy's pawn. So that's a tricky line, which explains that Black cannot really take on b2 because the rook on a7 will end up out of play. Rook c7 played instead, so Black is intending to take this pawn. And well, if White's going to take and Black takes on c6, I think Black will be definitely relieved. And maybe in this endgame material, maybe you're even a bit better. I don't think the pawn on c3 is a weapon for white.
Sure.
So rook c4 played. White got to support the pawn on c6. Pawn takes b2, and now the other rook will take over the defensive task and will eliminate that pawn on b2. Black played f6. Rook takes pawn, and rook d8. So here you got to watch out. Don't move the knight, because then white will suffer some back rank issues. Therefore, rook d2 played to support the knight. And even though white doesn't have an immediate threat, look at this knight and pawn. They are dominating. The rook on c7, the bishop on c8 cannot move. And even though white cannot do much, I think it's practically much more unpleasant for black, as you always have to think about what happens if I move my rook or bishop. Maybe the passed pawn will become strong. And black played e5. So finally this bishop can be developed. King f1, bishop e6, attacking the rook. Rook goes back. And now rook b8 played, so controlling the open file. But here again, the knight goes to b7, preventing the black rook from becoming active.
Wow.
And it's still very, very annoying position. Like you can never take the knight and exploit that pin on the c file, because then at the end there is the b pawn, which is gonna promote. So black played here king f8. So king is coming closer to the center, which looks quite reasonable. White played g3, maybe a mysterious move, but Godart has an interesting idea. As after king e7, he wants to play f4. So he's really trying to put black under more pressure. And for instance, if black is going to take on f4, it's ugly for your pawn formation. Like your pawns are shattered. But there are clear ideas to attack the bishop on the e file, exploiting the pin. Maybe f5 can be played. Maybe you can double rooks. Maybe knight c5. I mean, there are a lot of ideas to think about. So that's the main idea of playing the move f4, to create a new open file for one of your rooks. And also here, Pragg just understands that. He decides to play the move e4, and the position remains closed. The center is closed. The king looks safe. And after rook d4, he played here the move f5. So what has white accomplished with playing that move f4? Looks like black is just getting a protected passed pawn for free. But that's actually not true. It's actually a very clever way of playing for white, as white went here for rook c5. And the idea, if black is not going to make any move, do you see it?
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, you go to e4, e5, and then the knight goes to where the rook is right now. Oh no, wait, you're leaving your pawn unattached.
Exactly. So, but you're getting closer to there. You got to take care of your pawn on c6. But generally, the plan is indeed to get a rook over to e5. But probably before doing that, you put the other rook on d6. So the rook defends the pawn, hits the bishop, and rook is defended by
oh my God,
by
you
the
cannot
knight.
take the knight because the pawn will be a queen. Oh,
exactly. Yeah, that's always the problem. The knight is untouchable.
Cute, very cute.
Yeah, but it's quite a remarkable maneuver. Is that you're activating the rooks behind your opponent's pawns. So black played here g6, and well, in fact, there are different ways of playing. Just don't play rook e5, as already said, because pawn on c6 is hanging.
Pardon.
In the game, after the move g6, white first played king f2, activating the king, and probably it's still playable for black. But what black needs to do is get rid of your main problem. And that is the knight on b7 and the pawn on c6. So challenging it with bishop c8 is probably the best move according to the machine. And the funny thing is that if we follow that idea of infiltrating with the rooks, the king can run away. And well, rook is guarding the 7th rank, so king is safe. If you go rook e8, well, you can go king f7. And the rook cannot really stay well on the back rank. If rook h8, you hit the rook again. If you do place your other rook on the 8th rank,
just take the pawn.
Then the pawn on c6 is hanging. So also white has some responsibility taking care of that pawn, because once the pawn is gone, it looks like black is totally back in the game. Anyway, I think it's a very difficult move to find bishop c8 because it sort of cuts off the rook on b8. Anyway, let's see what happened because bishop f7 was played. So the idea is probably to get the bishop over to e8 to attack the pawn from a different angle. Rook e5 check, and the king went back to f8. But now the rook comes in to d6, defending the pawn from the side, and you see that white is taking over with the rooks, controlling a lot of squares. And pawn on c6 and knight on b7 are also covering the b and c file. Black played bishop e8. And this is maybe a good moment to ask you to find a very pretty move here for white. Can you see what Godart played at this point?
Okay, also for you at home, of course. That's a little nice idea to think about, maybe. So many options. Maybe knight to d8.
Excellent. Wonderful, wonderful idea.
Good.
Like the knight is heading for the e6 square to set up a fork against king and rook. Black therefore played here the move rook c8 back. But now, can you see the follow-up?
Oh, is it just pushing the pawn?
Pushing the pawn, because pawn is poisoned, cannot be taken. It's again knight e6, winning the rook. So that is quite a nice.
Oh gosh, how must Pragg have felt in this situation?
Under pressure. Yeah, so he played here rook b2, and then king e3. Interestingly, you cannot really take the pawn because of anyway this move knight e6.
Yeah.
And next will be rook d8, and the blockading piece will be removed very soon. So there followed rook b3. This is interesting moment because where are you going with the king? Are you going forward, backwards, which direction? You have to watch out. Yeah, there are ideas with rook d3 indeed. So king went back to f2, and I'm not really sure what Godart had in mind at this point. Probably if black is going to give checks, do you think he would have gone for a repetition of moves? He would be satisfied with the draw? I doubt it. I think he's really looking for an escape path for the king.
Yeah, but can you not just escape on the h files?
Exactly. So if you keep on giving checks, I think the king is just going to hide on h3. So, yeah. And after that, the plan with knight e6 and rook d8 will be continued. I think that is what black realized as well. So instead of keep on giving checks,
in worst case, the king can even move over.
Exactly, you can maybe even block the other side as well. That's also absolutely fine. So anyway, Pragg decided to take another pawn. Knight e6 check, king e7. Once again, you have to be careful still. Rook d8 fails to rook takes c7. Very nasty trick. If you take the rook, then the rook on d8 will be hanging, and black is okay again. So you absolutely got to make sure that you don't give up your main asset too early. Rook takes, pawn on a6 was played, attacking the bishop. Rook b2 check, king e3. So the king is moving up the board anyway. It's coming back again. And well, what you're going to do with the bishop? Well, if you go back with it, there is knight c5, discover check. And the king can't really go anywhere. It has to go to the f-file, but then the knight can take the bishop for free. So instead, bishop b3 was played. But now another very nice move, because bishop is quite vulnerable here, as well as the rook. Rook b6. There's no need to move the knight from e6. Instead, white sets up a new pin. So if you do take the knight, the rook on b2 will be taken. And well, in any case, there will follow something like knight c5, discover check, and then you pick up the bishop. So that's basically sort of what happened. I mean, king d7 was played, knight c5, check, king takes pawn, and you take with the rook the bishop. And
that
well,
happened in the game?
This is all the game. This is what happened. I mean, position is just completely lost. Probably the best thing Black can do now is keep on playing this position, but I doubt that you're going to survive it. Like, you just only have to make sure as white that you don't trade off too many pawns, because the rook and knight versus rook, it's theoretical draw.
So here's the problem, of course. If I would play as white against Pragg, I would lose. That's almost
no. You will not lose it.
I would lose.
I think you would definitely screw it up. Like you trade off too many pots. But Arne, I have high respect for you. Yeah, like you're not going to blunder your knight in this case. I doubt it. I really doubt it. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's what he could have tried. Instead, he decided to take another pawn. But now look at this fantastic team of pieces as white continues playing for a mating attack against the black king.
How funny how long the rook in the middle is staying there, protected by the pawn.
It's fantastically protected, so it doesn't make sense to attack it. I can give you a few lines. For instance, if you go with the king to d8, you give knight b7 check. And after king d7, you go rook d5. And you got to give up the support on the rook. If king e6, you first give another check, ensuring that the rook is defended, and then the other rook can be taken.
That so I would win.
You will win that for sure. After king b8, for instance, was also not played, but just another nice tactical line. It's basically the same idea, just a mirrored image. Like after king b7, check, king a6, insert another Zwischen Schach.
Yes.
Rook b6 check.
It's actually a7, checkmate, no?
And checkmate is even nicer. So it's all winning. Black decided to move the rook away. Many interesting moves. Knight takes e4, just taking another pawn. And after, it's also check. Why not remove the pawn?
Yeah, of course.
King b6. Sorry. And there is knight d6. And here Pragg had seen enough, because white is just about to go rook b5, forcing the king to go to the a file.
No checks, nothing.
Then it's going to be another letter mate on the a and b file. Remarkable game, right?
Insane. Yeah. What a great game by Godart. 2,377. Was he ever over 2,400? Probably, right?
Yeah, he's IM, so he must have been over at some point. But probably this is for sure his
game
best
of the
game
career.
Of his career. Yeah,
for
definitely.
Sure. A true underdog. Absolutely fantastic and very, very nicely analyzed, Robert, as always. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, that was it. Our underdog has been, how do you call it? Put on the pedestal. And Praggnanandhaa, well, he will come back, of course. And many speculate he will also be one of those players who will get the 2,800. But this one takes a little toll, and he will probably have lost, like, I don't know, how much do you lose? 15 points or something, I guess.
Well, K factor 10, yeah. So he's losing like I don't know, 8 or 9 points or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, that can be tolerated.
It's easier to lose them to regain them at that level.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Thank you so much. Alrighty, see you at the next underdog.
See you next time. Bye bye.